Hello and welcome. I am so grateful to have Hannah here. Hannah is a patient who has been kind enough to share her story, and I know that this will help a lot of patients out there suffering with a condition that's really not well understood, and that's mast cell activation syndrome. Hannah, thank you for coming and talking with me.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Okay, before we jump into your story, let me just help people who haven't come across the term MCAS or mast cell activation syndrome understand what it is. The mast cell is a specific type of immune cell, and it's primarily located in the upper part of the GI tract, in the stomach, and the small intestine. And a lot of patients that come in to see me have inappropriate activation of the mast cell. Most of them have been exposed to mold, Hannah, like you were. And after the exposure, the mast cell starts to express itself inappropriately, starts to kind of blow up and release a lot of inflammatory markers. And in a lot of patients, that can be sensitivity to foods, it can be joint pain and rashes. But in some patients, it can cause really severe depression, anxiety, and other psychiatric symptoms. And this is the part that really isn't well understood, I think, even among a lot of functional medicine doctors who treat MCAS. So, with that background, Hannah, will you just kind of share the story of what was happening in the years before you came to see me? Now, we just met not too long ago, but you had been struggling for a while. Can you help us understand what was going on with you?
Yeah, I can trace my symptoms back to early childhood, but in the most recent decade, the biggest trauma trigger happened in 2016 when I had my first suicidal ideation episode. I had a
Yeah.
very dissociative episode after a very stressful time in my life that kind of hit ahead. At the time, I was living in my childhood home. I was with my parents, and there were signs in that house of
Yeah.
mold issues and moisture issues, but we never made that connection. So I spent about the decade of my 20s
Yeah.
very sick, very ill between college and my first years in my career. At the different houses that I lived in, I've lived in different living conditions, but most recently, the home that I just purchased in about 18 months ago, had a history of bad piping and water
Yeah.
damage.
Right.
Um, and we've done a ton of remediation. But as with all, type of activity and work, it's just seemed to work up in me a lot of mobilization of those toxins. And so this spring was the worst I'd ever gotten. I hit this wall, but I had known and been aware of mold as a an issue for me.
Yeah.
I didn't understand what MCAS is. I had no context for it, but I just knew mold was a problem for about 6 years. And I'd been searching for professional help for about 6 years, and just could not ever seem to make it work until I got connected with you. So it's been a
Yeah.
long journey.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're someone who you've had really treatment resistant depression, bursts
Hmm.
of suicidality for 10 years. I mean, that
Hmm.
kind of takes out most of your 20s. And
Yeah.
you've had multiple homes with mold exposure. And then you moved in to your more recent home, I think February of 23,
Hmm.
and started to do some remediation work, spiked up the mold spores and toxins in the environment. And then severe suicidality. You told me you weren't sleeping, feeling of
Hmm.
doom. You told me fatigue, horrible heartburn. Everything is just really,
Yeah.
really hitting you. And I think they found mold in your ductwork. And
Hmm.
you felt a little bit better after getting through that when after they remediated the ductwork, right? But you're left with odd buzzing feelings throughout your body, anxiety, depression, sinus issues, fatigue, heartburn. Like you're still kind of a mess,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. 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 And
And
my psychological evaluation, because I had been trying to see what could be treated, obviously from traditional psychological, sorry, like
yeah, so
traditional mental health stuff wasn't working, and
yeah,
I had gotten scored very, very high on PTSD, and that was the moment where I was like, I have to do something about this.
Yes. Yeah. You were really struggling. And when I was sick with mold myself, the depression, the mood instability, for me, the rage and just the sadness and despair, that was the worst part. Yes, it caused fatigue. Yes, it caused pain, but the the psychological manifestations or mold are just absolutely brutal. Brutal, brutal, brutal. And you are you are not alone in the number of people who've been exposed to mold and then wanted to kill themselves. Mold will not physically kill you, but it will make you want to die. And that feeling of despair and depression is just uniquely horrible with mold. I just hear that a lot from patients, and I've experienced it to a degree myself. And so you came in early November to come see me. You're in Alabama, and you kind of had an idea that you might have MCAS, and you were right. And so pretty quickly, I agreed with that you had MCAS. And so maybe from your perspective, what happened next?
Well, I will say, yeah, I responded right away to our treatment, just focusing on like the antihistamines. I responded so well, like within 48 hours of taking I felt the fog lift. That underlying, yeah, that underlying doom that was always like I would associate with like the suicidality
Yeah.
just lifted like so fast. And
Yeah.
this is coming from someone who was 4 years on multiple psychiatric medications,
Right. Right.
which did way so much harm for me, like a lot of harm. By the time I emerged out of the whole like let's treat this with antidepressants and
Yeah.
all that stuff, I was so mentally, I just felt so damaged. It took me years
Right.
to sort of like come
Right.
off that stuff. And the fact that I could take something and then within 48 hours,
Yeah.
I got angry. You know this. I got really, really angry. I was like, why is this? The solution was so elegant.
You said I
And so,
feel better and I'm mad about it.
and
So
I
why were
feel
you
better.
mad?
I was mad because, like I said, there's no way I could have arrived at a solution like this without professional help,
Yeah.
especially your help. So the problem is complex. The solution is kind of elegant and it's within reach and it's something that I could have done years ago, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
supposedly, but I know that like it has taken time for the research and understanding to come around.
Yeah.
So, but again, you look back and you're like, that was my 20s. I was supposed to
I
be
know.
having fun and being full of life, and
Yeah.
it was the worst decade of my life.
Right.
I
Right. But it's such a simple solution, and that's why I was so glad that you wanted to come talk, because lots of people have mast cell, and sometimes the simple treatments work the best. You don't need compounded medicines and all these crazy formulations. I gave you Allegra and Pepsid twice daily, and that was the treatment that you needed. And the suicidality went away, the anxiety went away, the depression went away. Like, what a great thing. It's just amazing, right? When you treat
Yeah,
the right problem with the right tools, symptoms go away, and you don't have to guess, is this working? You know in 48 hours that you're in a different place, right?
yeah, yeah.
Tell anyone listening um how you found the right dose for Allegra, because I gave you a little bit of wiggle room, and I want people to hear that people with MCAS, little tiny doses go a long way. I tell people, play around with the dose. I want you on it twice daily. But you did a great job. You got an A+ at your follow-up visit for the tweaking you
Yeah.
did. So tell people what you did.
Yeah, so the idea was to start at half of a 180 dose, so that would have been like 90 milligrams twice
Yep.
daily.
Yep.
And I took that half tablet, right, of the 24-hour Allegra,
Yep.
and it was like being punched in the face. But I had remembered the conversation that you just this thing from our conversation kind of snagged in my head where when we had been talking about the antidepressant medicine and how you would even recommend such like tiny little microdoses like
Right.
2.5 milligrams, right?
Yeah.
For someone who's highly sensitive. And I thought to myself, wow, maybe I'm just super sensitive. So I went and got like it's called 12-hour, but it's like a 60
Yeah.
milligrams. And the
Exactly. Yep.
difference between me taking 90 milligrams versus me taking 60 milligrams was the whole difference that I needed. And now I
Yeah.
can take that twice a day and I don't feel hungover or drunk, or like I can drive my car.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
it's just amazing how like getting the dosage right for
Mhm.
someone
Yeah.
sensitive as I am, it's like if that's the only like if that's the barrier, that's such a simple, silly
It is,
little
right? It's like, okay, I got to go buy a $12 bottle of Allegra
yeah,
and get my life back. Um,
yeah, yeah.
Sometimes it's Allegra, sometimes it's Claritin, sometimes it's Zyrtec. For whatever reason, I think Allegra has tended to work the best with my patients, but I gave you the Allegra and I wanted you to pair it with Pepsid. So we get the H1 blocker to calm the mast cell, and then we get the H2 blocker to calm that mast cell from a couple different angles. And the combination is really, really nice when it works, right? Um,
Which I'll say I have taken Zyrtec D and Claritin and it never worked for me. So I wouldn't
yeah,
have arrived at that combination. So
yeah,
just to emphasize my desire to seek professional help and to really get paired with someone is always been because I never wanted to DIY it. I
yeah,
never wanted to try to figure this out on my own.
yeah,
I wanted something that was going to work, not just to save me time, but also to be a solution that's safe, that's going to help me and not hurt me. And I didn't want that, like, I'm just going to go and figure this out myself just because other
yeah.
doctors aren't giving me much attention.
And I'll say to your credit, one of the things that stood out to me when we were meeting was you had basically just had a horrible decade of life in the 20s to 30s. You were suicidal, you were depressed, you were hurting, migraines, joint pain, brain on fire. I mean, you were just kind of a mess. And but you knew you were going to get better and you stuck with it until you found the thing that works. And so a lot of people would have stopped at some point and just, this is my life. I'm sick. And I think a lot of the credit goes to you for knowing and listening to that voice inside that says I can get well. And that really
Yeah.
impressed me. And so as soon as I heard that, I'm like, oh, Hannah's getting better.
Yeah.
This is going to be great. Because that's how it always goes. So we kind of have seen that mast cell can cause devastating psychological symptoms, but the solution isn't always that difficult. I think that's the main thing I want people to hear. Um, and I think the other just underlying layer is that mast cell doesn't just happen on its own. There are distinct reasons why it happens. It's most common in my patients for people to have been exposed to mold and be living in a moldy house, but I've seen it with heavy metals and I've seen it with GI problems as well. Um, Maybe we can pivot over. Is there anything else on mast cell or that piece of your journey that you would want to share?
No, I don't, nothing else comes to mind.
Okay. And I gave you a couple other pieces of homework. I asked you to do limbic retraining, and I threw my favorite probiotics at you. Do you have any feedback on those treatments yet?
Yeah, so my number one point of feedback is for the last decade, I'm telling you, I have tried to meditate. I have gone through the programs, I have done classes. Meditation never felt good, never felt good because anytime that I would like turn within to try to attend to myself, I was met with this angry mob with pitchforks that just wanted to burn me. They were like, my body was
Yeah.
unhappy. And so being able to manage that mast cell activation
So
allowed me to meditate for the first time. Now
yeah,
it's like riding a bike. It's so natural. It's so I can maintain just that openness, that sort of like you're watching the clouds in the sky go by and your thoughts are just passing in front of you. I've never been able to do that.
isn't that
So I've never
wonderful?
been able to have the benefits of the
Yeah.
meditation before, like I've had now. So that's been probably the first
That was
thing.
neuroinflammation. The angry mob with pitchforks yelling mean things at you. That
Yeah.
happens to a lot of people, and it's the reason why a lot of people say, I just can't meditate, right? Their brains are on fire. They have neuroinflammation from mold toxins and mast cell, right?
Hmm.
Their leaky gut is causing all sorts of immune dysregulation. And when we plug that up, that's a sign that your brain inflammation has gone down directly. right? Because psychiatric symptoms are a reflection of inflammation in the organ of the brain. Anxiety, depression, that is so frequently inflammation in the brain. And when you treat those the right way, it all calms down. It's like turning the volume down. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
now we can meditate. Now we can make some progress here. And so that was wonderful. I love the burning mob with pitchforks. You squashed them. You sent them away, um,
Yeah.
which is so amazing. I was just so happy to hear that. Thank you so much. This has just been great, great, great stuff. I know that there are people who are just where you were, and I hope this encourages them to consider mast cell as maybe one of the reasons why they've been struggling, and to reach out to a doctor who's familiar with treating it. Because functional medicine doesn't have to be that hard. It doesn't have to be thousands and thousands of dollars of urine tests and stool tests and cortisol tests. Sometimes I think that your problem is mast cell, and here's Pepcid and Allegra. So I was just so happy that you were here to share your story. It's going to help a lot of people.
Yeah. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. I really value it a lot.
This is wonderful. All right. Well, I know I will be talking to you soon. Thanks again.
All right. Thank you.